Hey, Stu, you wrote an article a couple of weeks ago in military.com on the difference between a tactical athlete or tactical fitness and a regular athlete or regular fitness. What, spend a second and tell us about the difference between those two.
Sure, Tom. There is a big difference. The tactical athlete and the regular athlete. Both are similar because you all have to worry about all the elements of fitness from speed and endurance, strength and power, mobility and flexibility, grip strength, all of those little things like that. However, the main difference is an athlete doesn't need to be good at all of them, depending on your sport, right? Whereas a tactical athlete needs to be good at every single one of them, right? But not great. If you're an athlete competing on a very high level, world-class level, you have to be great A+ level at swimming, right? And endurance, right? Whatever your sport is. However, you don't need to be a world-class swimmer to go into special ops. Even Navy SEALs aren't world-class swimmers, right? So that's really the main difference. And if you want to look at it on another level, athletes win or lose depending upon their perfect level of fitness, and tactical athletes live to fight another day when they win.
Stu, maybe we should tell everybody what we're doing here. We're starting a podcast series featuring you, and we're going to be discussing the articles that you've written. So you go into more detail and create a podcast for people who may not be able to read the article that week, but could listen to it while they're doing something else.
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Stu Smith. I'm a fitness writer. I have been working out and writing about it in the now called tactical fitness genre for almost 20 years now, right? So I focus on military, law enforcement, firefighter style fitness programming to help people get to and through the training, as well as maintain and recover from the actual stresses of the job itself. So that is tactical fitness. And long before the term tactical fitness was even developed, I have been in that genre, like I said, for almost 20 years now. So now we're taking these articles that I write, which I've written over 1,000. You can find them on military.com and my website at stusmith.com and stusmithfitness.com, and making videos discussing a little bit more in depth some of the topics of our articles and our writings.
Yeah, and you and I have been friends for a very long time, and we've shared this interest in fitness and tactical fitness, and now I'm Tom Cowan. I'm a recovering entrepreneur and CEO, and now I'm at Columbia University, living out the rest of my career as an academic. I know that's hard to believe for you, Stu, and for other people who've known me most of my life, but
yes, well, we all have these phases in life that we're going through, and we're going to try to push on and keep moving and keep living, right? It's all about training to compete, and no matter what stage of life you're in, you got to be training to compete, whether it's academically, mentally, physically, operationally. All of those things are very important. So, you got to keep moving. So
Stu, you talked about one of the big differences between being a tactical athlete and an average athlete is speed and endurance.
Yeah, well, if you think of athletes that need speed and endurance, right? It's sprinters, right? It's football players, it's baseball players. Their kind of speed and endurance are two different really elements of fitness, right? Because there are some athletes that have a lot of speed with no endurance, and there's some athletes that have a lot of endurance with no speed, right? When you looking at cross-country runners or long-distance swimmers, they're a little bit slower, from 0 to 50, but they can just keep on going forever. So, it just depends on, what your athletic background is whenever we talk about, tactical fitness, because we all come into the tactical professions with a history, right? And that history is your foundation of fitness going into a very physical job, right? And what that is, you might be a strength and power athlete, you might be an endurance athlete, you might have skills in the water that's all you've done is swim all your life, right? And gravity's going to start pounding on you once you become a tactical athlete, right? Or just the opposite, right? You have no water skills, and if you're trying to become a SEAL or a diver or somebody, PJ, where swimming is very important, those are certain skills that you have to master into to get there. So it really, you take an athletic foundation, and to become a tactical athlete, you have to really focus on your weaknesses in order to move to that next level.
So Stu, when you're looking at a tactical athlete, what is the purpose of speed and endurance? Why do you train for speed and endurance as a tactical athlete?
Well, it's almost like a hybrid fitness style of training, if you think about it, because you don't need to be a world-class sprinter or a world-class cross-country runner or swimmer to become a tactical athlete. Hey, it's great if you were, but it's very likely that you have a lot of weaknesses if you focus solely on, that one sport, right? So speed athletes, are great, but the tactical athlete might not be able to run a 4.440, but he's going to be agile and fast enough to be able to catch a bad guy, to run to cover if there's bullets flying. Those type of things, speed are very important for the tactical athlete. Even if you're, in a very challenging, spec ops program like Rangers or SF and, Navy SEALs, where it's all long distance stuff, running and rucking, things like that. So, speed is very important as well.
It's also chasing perps down.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. For police officers, exactly.
And what role does strength and power play in the training, Stu?
Well, I personally think strength primarily, and power too, is just strength and motion. Is work in motion actually. Is probably the most important foundation that you have, right? Because once you are fairly strong, you have an ability to maintain that strength, even if you're focusing on more endurance stuff, right? And it kind of goes both ways too. If you're more of an endurance athlete, you have an ability to put on some strength, and still be really fast and very, be able to run forever. However, some of the better hybrid athletes that I've seen in the past are, former power guys that dropped everything and went into a special ops program, for instance, and, became, endurance athletes, so to speak, so they could make that transition a little easier. I mean, I'll tell you a story just about myself. I was a powerlifting football player when I was in high school. I got recruited to college. I went to the Naval Academy and was going to try to play football, but long story short, I didn't play. I wound up playing rugby, and I got my butt handed to me, the first few weeks of Naval Academy training, which is nothing. I mean, it's push-ups, sit-ups, it's mile-and-a-half run. At that time, I thought anything over 100 yards was long distance. So that's the kind of mentality I went into the training with. Sure, I ran and I did that, but I wasn't good at it. It took me a good year and a half, 2 years to make that transition to go from powerlifting football player to a good enough athlete to where I was able to be a good student at SEAL training. And the way I did it is I actually started training like a triathlete. I ran, I swam, I biked, and any type of calisthenics and were my resistance training. And I didn't do any heavy weight training. But you know what? Even after a year and a half, I never really lost the strength. The strength is like the foundation for a lot of people. So if you have a foundation background of strength training, that's great, real easy. It's a lot of work, but you got to turn it into a more hybrid athlete. Same holds true for the endurance athletes. They should probably run a little less or swim a little less and start lifting, right? To get that weakness, more of a strength.
Stu, when you and I were hanging out together couple of weeks ago, the first thing that I know hit your mind was that I need to do more 1,000-calorie workouts. That was one thing. But the second thing that you said to me, though, was that you immediately noticed that I was, my lower back was tight and my calves were tight. What role does the whole issue of flexibility and mobility play in the tactical athlete?
Well, it's critical in every branch of service, police, fire departments. I mean, you think about where injuries occur a lot of times. It's usually going from being still to moving really fast like that, right? So you're looking at, let's say you've been sitting in a car all day and all of a sudden you see a criminal run across the street. Now you have to go catch them, right? And, your hams are tight, calves are tight. You're probably going to blow an Achilles when you start sprinting. Firefighters all the time, one of their biggest injuries besides heart attack is just jumping off of the truck, and landing, and either ankle injuries or Achilles tendon injuries just from being too tight. But yeah, when you're moving out, you're rucking a lot of weight on your back, you're running fast, all of those things, hip mobility, ankle mobility, swimming with fins, ankle mobility is critical. If you ever swim with fins and your ankles kill you, that's because your ankles aren't flexible enough. So
it's usually my calves.
Mobility is key. And as we age, it's even more important.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because I tell you what, when I'm 47 now and running 30, 40 miles a week really aggravates my hips to a point where, when we're peaking at that kind of high mileage, I have to spend a significant amount of my time after running in the pool doing big kicks and treading water. And I call it aqua jogging basically. And I'm just moving my hips in all ranges of motion, up, down, left, right. And that helps so much. It has saved me for years. And then you top it off with some foam rolling and stretching. You can't go wrong with those. And if you're looking for mobility, try to stretch every day and foam roll and, do some movements, where you're taking your joints through a full range of motion, whether it's your shoulder, your hips, your legs, your knees, your ankles, and just move them.
Yeah, we're going to come back to that because we should really spend time on one of the podcasts doing the whole issue of stretching, mobility, the use of the foam roller. As you know, that's helped me a lot recently.
Oh, absolutely.
In reestablishing that mobility. One of the things you talk about is muscle stamina. What do you mean by muscle stamina?
Well, muscle stamina is basically the ability to do calisthenics or your body weight, or even more than your body weight, many, many times, right? Before you start failing, right? Eventually, it doesn't matter. If you're under a log for 10 minutes, your shoulders are going to fail and you just have to suck it up. I personally think building muscle stamina is parallel to building mental toughness, right? Because people ask me all the time, how do you build mental toughness? And I love the quote Jocko uses, one of my SEAL buddies, that just get tougher, right? And it's kind of true, right? But there's a lot to it that you can train for it, and you can work hard for it, and you can wake up and early in the morning and go work out and be comfortable being uncomfortable. But I have found that muscle stamina is one of those things that when you're doing push-ups or overhead press or squats or whatever, and then you start to fail, push that last one out. It's just one of those ways to okay, this really hurts, right? But there's a fine line between mental toughness and stupidity as well.
Yes,
right?
there is.
So you don't want to, push it to a point where you break something.
Yeah.
But you have to know what that is. So the only way you're going to know what that is you pushing yourself to find it.
Yeah. And Stu, one of the things you've told me over the years is that the older you are in this process, the more you have to pay attention to not hurting yourself. We were talking about the other day about the 27-year-old fail. We'll come back to that in another podcast. But it gets that same way the older you get as you're training, and you have a great theory that you developed 20 years ago on periodization of training. We'll come back to that in another podcast too, but I think that whole issue of knowing how hard to push yourself, pushing yourself to that limit, but not doing in a dumb way is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know what? The year I met you is when I developed that periodization program.
It's
Right?
true.
It's been 20 years ago today. This year that I've been using, my periodization theory, around, every season has a different focus, and every focus is one of the elements of tactical fitness. And it has worked great. It has worked great for myself. It has worked great for students that I've trained with. It's, worked great for yourself. And just for full disclosure, Tom here is one of my mentors from 20 years back, and has always been there to give me great advice. So it's actually his advice to say, "Hey, Stu, you need to do a podcast." So we're here and talking shop. And so thank you for making that.
Well, it's always been a pleasure. Old man grip. So does old man grip mean the weak old man grip or the old farmer Western cowboy grip?
Yeah, definitely not the weak. Definitely not the weak. Right. So we're looking at, I'm 20, sometimes 30 years older than most of the kids that work out with me now. And the other day I was saying that, it's I'm twice as old as many of these kids that are working out with me. And then my wife goes, sometimes 3 times as old. I'm like, oh,
nice.
That hurts.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know where that time went, by the way.
Yeah, really.
It's listening. It goes by fast, but enjoy it. But yeah, old man grip is what my guys call, say that I have whenever, whether we're wrestling or something like that. If you ever wrestled your dad, when you were younger and you're like, oh my God, he's just crushing me, right? And you're just able to hold on to you with that, that old man grip, it's definitely strong. An old man grip is strong.
Yes.
It's not like a weak, feeble old man grip. So yeah, one of the tactical elements one of the elements of tactical fitness is grip. Whether you are holding on the rope or caving ladders or hose, and just being able to hold on to another person, if need be, to rescue that person or even rescue yourself. Grip is critical. And we do that a lot with a variety of exercises, as simple as pull-ups and deadlifts to, adding in farmer walks where you're holding on, the 2 dumbbells in your hands and walking. You can make it even harder by walking up and down hills or steps, to work your legs and your grip at the same time.
You're talking about Jocko a minute ago, that picture that he always uses, that black and white picture of him looking, that's what when I see that picture, that's old man grip right there to me.
Yeah, he's tough dude.
Yeah. And I love
compete with his podcast, by the way. He goes for like 2 hours. I'm looking for 25, 30 minutes.
No, there's no way. I mean, I love listening to those guys, but there's no way. I do get a kick out of the fact he takes a picture of his watch at 4:30 every morning. That's hilarious.
Hey, you know what? It's cool. He's got it on the back of his t-shirts too. And by the way, special thanks to those guys, because they gave me a lot of t-shirts for this fundraiser that I'm doing for my Heroes of Tomorrow program in the community center. That they gave me a lot of t-shirts to donate it to sell and to raise money for our group. So we have a lot of people that are big fans of that
we
group.
ought to just take a second, since you're on that subject, and talk about the way you get ideas and the Heroes of Tomorrow program. This is something great.
Right. Well, I got a couple different ways to get ideas to write about, right? Whether it's, people emailing me, stu@stusmith.com, or, asking a question. Sometimes these questions come in, multiple times, and I realize, wow, I need to write an article on that. It's a great question, right? Or, I work out with kids 6 days a week, that all want to serve in some way, military, law enforcement, firefighter. I naturally get a lot of guys that want to be special ops, whether it's SEALs or EOD or divers or PJs, Army Ranger, SF, all of those, Marine Recon guys, MARSOC. So we get a lot of the kind of higher end physical fitness guys that we need. in those jobs. And because I create programs for them, if I'm going to, write about training people, right, I need to be training, right? Otherwise, it's just a freaking theory and a guess if it's going to work or not. And I do the workouts too. So not only do I know they can do it, at 20 years old, but an old timer can do it at 47, 50 years old. We even have some 55-year-old guys that are like Maryland, State bomb squad guys that come in and work out with us, and they're, spectacular shape. They're the guys that I look like. I want to be like him when I'm his age, and so it can be done. You can stay really fit, and do these jobs. You just have to be smart about it and not overtrain year after year after year until you break, like I did when I was 27 years old.
The last thing you had on the list of the tactical athlete was the area of skills. And you and I have talked about this, that I've always incorporated skills into my training. And we were talking about that a couple of weeks ago when we were together, fighting and shooting. Because to me, the definition of being able to be effective is to be able to fight and shoot, even at my, poor.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Fighting, shooting. If you have access to a range and you can shoot and exercise at the same time, go for it. Because,
well, Stu, out here in Arizona, that's called your backyard.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. There are some states where that is just the best. You can actually do that. However, there are other skills too that you need that are not just, skills per se, just a neat thing to know, but things that are actually survival skills. I mean, swimming is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know how to swim, you are ineffective on 75% of this earth, right? Whether it's, saving yourself or saving a family member, saving a buddy, right? I mean, those things are very important, to you, especially in the tactical professions, that, just a simple skill as swimming, can be the difference between living and dying, or you, being able to save somebody, that's in that situation.
Stu, doesn't it go one step further though? Don't you have to be comfortable in the water?
Yes. Like I said earlier, when I was talking the difference between tactical fitness and athletic fitness, is, you don't need to be a world-class swimmer to be in special ops. I was not. I grew up in Florida, swam a lot, but I was never a swim team guy. I was like I said, powerlifting football guy, but I was comfortable in the water.
Right.
And so, like I said, you don't need to be world-class at swimming. You don't even need to be a competitive swimmer. You just need to learn how to swim well, and be comfortable in the water to the point where you are competent when things get stressful.
Yes.
Because things will get stressful, especially when it's dark, right? And you're out there by yourself, or, you're trying to find your swim buddy because you lost them. Those type of things happen. So, it's something that, there's a comfort level that you have to have, especially with water.
So, Stuart, we want to hold this to 20 minutes so we don't bore everybody to death. But why don't you take a moment and just summarize what we were talking about in the terms of to and through maintenance and growth cycles, how you begin something like this, or if you're doing it, how do you make sure that you're doing it in a smart way?
Sure. Yeah. Every podcast that we do here in the future is going to be, 20, 30 minutes long. I don't want to take a lot of your time. I appreciate you listening. However, all of these are also articles. So if you happen to do a Google search on tactical fitness and regular fitness, Stu Smith, you'll find it on military.com, and you read it word for word. And, maybe we talked a little bit about one thing and missed something else, but, pretty much tactical fitness, and the difference is it's really about living and dying and doing your job, right? It's not about winning and losing, right? So tactical fitness is focusing on all the elements of fitness: speed, endurance, strength, power, flexibility, mobility, muscle stamina, grip, all of those, and certain skills too. All of those things come into play to build the tactical athlete. And if you're good at all of them, say B, even B- at all of them, that's perfect. Whereas the athlete will want to be striving to be an A plus, and they're constantly looking for that missing top 5%, of their fitness element, whether that's strength or power or endurance or a certain skill like swimming, right? They are focusing on going from 95% to 100%, right? And going on the world-class level of training, because that's really how you have to look at yourself. You have to look at yourself as an athlete, not as a policeman or a fireman or a military guy, an army guy, whatever. You have to look at yourself as an athlete and treat yourself like an athlete. Don't eat like crap. Don't drink a lot of, alcohol, which doesn't help you. I mean, it's something that I'm never going to say don't do, because, I drink beer, but I don't drink a lot, everything in moderation. But, take care of yourself so you can better perform. And because your performance is one day, and this is the key, one day will be the difference between you living or dying, or your buddy living or dying, or you being able to save someone, when in a very life or death situation.
Stu, how can the folks that are watching or listening to this get involved with what you're doing?
All right. So yeah, my Heroes of Tomorrow program, you go to heroesoftomorrow.org and check out what we're doing. Right now, we're in the middle of a big fundraiser for March and April that goes to our community center. They are the Severna Park Community Center is a nonprofit organization that lets us use their facilities 500 to 600 hours a year. So yeah, if you do the math, that's about 12 to 14 hours a week that we are running and swimming and using their weight room and their gym, with 15, 20, sometimes more people early in the morning, so we don't get in people's way, but we're very grateful. So they help us out tremendously. And any way you can help them out, it keeps my program open, and it's a free program. I get paid nothing. The kids who join us don't have to pay anything. And it's just a great community. The cool thing I like to say is that, the same conversations that I had when I was their age, but with all my buddies, but today they just have different faces. They're the same people. I can't look at the millennial generation and say, bunch of snowflakes, because I see the millennials who are signing up to go serve when there's 15 years of sustained combat, against war on terror. And then you have police and firefighters that are fighting battles every day, to save our communities. That's the millennial I see. So, shout out to those guys, because, I see a bit of the, greatest generation in every kid that comes through my door. The greatest generation still lives every generation. You just got to find them. And one thing I always say, the motivated find me.
They absolutely do. Well, Stu, that's about all the time we have today, buddy.
All right. Well, hey, man, thanks for listening. Thanks for doing this, Tom. Thanks for making the suggestion. I think this is a good one. I write about tactical fitness, so the first podcast, I think, had to be explaining what I think tactical fitness is. So for you guys out there listening, get out there, train to compete. Go get it done. This is Stu Smith out. Hey, this is Stu Smith from StuSmithFitness.com, and I want to make a huge announcement. So excited about. This is my 20th year of writing fitness programs and fitness books. I've got several, probably 40 titles to my name between published books and ebooks that you can find at StuSmithFitness.com. But check this out. Tactical Strength. Right? This is probably what I think is my best book yet. And it's all the latest, greatest workouts that we do here in Maryland. And this is our winter strength program. Full color too. Never had a book full color. So excited about that. But yeah, Tactical Strength. It's got a great program, pictures, color, great little workout setup. Now you're not going to find a whole lot of cardio in this one. This one's all about putting on mass, putting on power, and getting those bench press, squats, deadlifts, hang cleans, all those important strength foundation exercises that you need to do any type of tactical work, police, military, firefighter, special ops. So check it out. StuSmithFitness.com. It's on Amazon. Very excited about this one.